welcome to the show. I'm delighted to finally get you here. We got here in the end.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Delighted. And, I always start every episode asking people to introduce themselves because I'm a notorious botcher of introductions. And in our earlier episodes, you might hear that. So I always ask people now to introduce themselves. So do you want to give us a bit of like who you are, what you do, and in particular, how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so Adam Golomb, I'm the CEO of Primanti Bros. We're a 91-year-old restaurant. We think we're one of the oldest restaurant chains in America. 45 locations today in 4 states. We'll be opening 46 in about 10 days.
Nice.
91 years old, but still growing. Known for our famous sandwich, which is 2 slices of Italian bread, your choice of meat, provolone cheese, and then this is where it goes a little off the rails, is we put coleslaw and french fries on the sandwich, not on the side.
Yeah, very Pittsburgh.
Yes, and 2 slices of tomato. So it's founded in 1933. There's a bunch of stories out there about how it came to life, but it's a classic. We say almost famous. It does have some famousness to it nationally. That kind of started in the 80s. And, I have about 25 years of restaurant retail marketing. I joined Primanti's 5 years ago as their first CMO. Worked for, I think it was probably a year and a half, and then the pandemic showed up, and you get to become the jack of all trades.
Of course.
Yeah, master of none when pandemic showed up, is just to try to build the business back. Ended up taking over operations, which I love to say. Marketing always complains about operations. Operations always complain about marketing. Well, I was responsible for both, so I could only complain to myself about each area. But then became CEO in January 23.
That's awesome. And, it's interesting. Like you mentioned the fries. That's also another Pittsburgh thing that don't they call it a Pittsburgh salad is when you have the fries?
You put fries. Yeah. So, people are like, what do you mean you put fries on the salad? And I'm always like, what do you mean you don't have fries on the salad? I grew up in Pittsburgh, so putting fries on a sandwich or a salad is like, you don't even think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would you not do it?
Why would you not? Why would you not? It's interesting that you referenced the pandemic because I'm always curious people's takes on like how things changed.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that like you had to become like a jack of all trades, because it was by hook or by crook, keep the lights on. What has kind of changed, do you think, in terms of like the operations of like a group like yours or the way businesses run between then and now?
Yeah, I'd say 3 things. The first is just the speed to make a decision. I mean, we came up with I think us and every restaurant chain in America read about Chili's doing a virtual brand at 8 a.m. that was going to do 150 million in sales. And by 2:00, we were spinning up virtual brands.
Yeah.
The old days, that would have been a 6 to 9 month discussion. So it's like, I'm really pushing the team because I'd say we're slipping back a little on the speed thing, but pushing the team, like, let's make a decision by Friday. Let's move on. It either is or it isn't. It's okay if it isn't. So I'd say that's number 1. Number 2, the off-premise business and digital as a whole is dramatically more than it is pre-pandemic. I think during the pandemic, we went to 100% off-premise, and then really allowed to open up parts of our restaurant. And then number 3, there was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get rid of lots of things, things that had sacred cows, and that's the CEO's favorite item, or that's one of the investors' favorite item. It was that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to cut your menu deeply in a chunk. And we've got a couple items coming back. I joked with the team. It took 4 years of outcry for us to bring nachos back. And they're coming back, for all the nacho lovers at Primanti's, we will be back in about a week. So,
in a week. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the CEO and I think one morning at like 7 or 8 a.m. started on the menu and went item by item. Is like, okay, is it a unique SKU? Yes. No.
Yeah.
Is it prep intensive? Yes, no. And it's like, okay, here's all the items we're just going to get rid of that we would never have gotten rid of, because there were so many sacred cows out there.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how so many places like refined menus at that time. And you're the first person to refer to them as sacred cows. And I think that's so true, especially for more like longer established brands that like once it's on the menu, it's almost like harder to get it off than getting it on the menu in and of itself. I guess, one of the things you were saying there that like dramatically upended since COVID is like your off-premise and digital.
Mm-hmm.
I've spoken to so many executive CEOs that will always bring that up as like sort of like a key sort of like business changer, like that probably won't ever go back. Like in the sense of like, you're saying speed decision kind of had to get fast, but like, okay, it's evening itself out now, getting rid of some menu items, putting them back on, it's evening itself out now. But like off premise and digital is like almost like here to stay. Like what's your hot take?
I mean, my initial hot take was we went through 5 years of innovation, and people say 5 weeks. I want to say like 5 hours, but the compression on the consumer embracing things that they never would have embraced before happened so fast and so rapidly. We were fortunate. We looked super smart. I would say we were anything but super smart. We had a lot of digital tools in place, a loyalty program and online ordering and curbside, but we spun up things like, in 3 or 4 days, we would spin up technology enhancements.
Yeah.
We would make changes that morning. I was, as chief marketing officer, I was designing a menu at one point in Canva. Like that's crazy. How dare they let the CMO do graphic design? But that's like the level.
We've all been there.
Yeah. But, we had a small marketing team, and it was like, okay, you guys go work on this. I'm going to go design the menu today and get it done. But yeah, no, I think the consumer embraced it. I think restaurants just got better at takeout.
Yeah.
Takeout was always a secondary piece of the business. Today, it's a primary piece of our business. And it's a harder thing. The hardest thing about takeout is if you have a bad experience on takeout, you have very little ability to recover it in real time.
Yeah.
If I make something wrong in the restaurant, so if I order wings and I wanted buffalo sauce and they came out with barbecue, I can go back and redo the wings real quick.
Yeah.
But if they're at home, you can't redo them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear, one of the things I hear a lot is that like, we're in this sort of like blameless part of the experience now where I guess everyone has so much sympathy for like a DoorDash or Uber Eats driver now that nobody really wants to blame them for the food showing up kind of poorly. Mm-hmm. And then because you get it from Uber Eats or DoorDash, you kind of complain to them on the app, which is not the same as like calling a place to get something sorted. And then it's just like the hassle has kind of made everybody kind of accept the consumer is able to accept like almost like a lower standard that they know that it's better in the store, but I'm hungry now, so I'm ordering it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we feel that way. Our sandwiches, we sell sandwiches, pizzas, wings. They don't travel great.
Yeah.
But people are happy when they get them because it's, it's fulfilling a need and fulfilling a moment.
It's interesting as well. And to that point, I had the CEO of East Coast Subs on the podcast maybe 2 months ago. And he was saying to me that like their big thing for 2024 was reigniting the sort of in-store experience, so to speak, that like because their business had on to your what you're saying, like upended because of COVID, that more people were ordering subs, but like even the containers that they were sending the subs in weren't necessarily like the best container to keep the heat of the sub in. So when it arrived, it was subpar, no pun intended. Yeah. And so their big thing is like, well, if somebody's going to order online, they're going to order online. But if they come into the store, how do we elevate that experience so much? And it's like, how do we get the fumes, as he said to me, like coming when you unroll that sub? And I think a lot about that in terms of like how restaurants are changing and adapting the physical space to make the experience differentiated from sort of online, because online. Is that something that you guys think about?
Yeah, we talk about it all the time. So we sell alcohol, and you can't sell alcohol in to-go in most of the states we operate in. So like, there's a chunk of the business that's just gone. So getting people in, I always say, hey, I'm happy you order any way you want. I'm a omni-channel guy. I don't care how you order as long as you order from us. But I'd love for you to come in, have 2 beers and a sandwich and an appetizer, and you just can't. And watch the game and with if you're watching the Steelers, my favorite team. To watch them with people that are enjoying it. I watched the Steelers playoff game in one of our restaurants. It was magical, with the 200 people cheering all at the same moment. You don't have that at home.
Totally. And I think about that a lot, like, because I think there's like a pendulum for like online, and we're like at this different phase of the pendulum now where I think it's swinging back towards like sort of a communal experience, communal eating experience, but also like somebody used the phrase to me recently, vibe dining. And I've been thinking about that for about 3 weeks now, I'd say nonstop, in terms of thinking like, you're going back to the restaurants for the vibe, like in a way that like online is so soulless. Like you're looking for, you want
in a brown paper bag and
like you're searching wings. You're not searching Primanti Bros or, you know what I mean? Like people are like, I want a hot dog. I gotta go and search hot dog, and whichever is like highest rated or closest to me or whatever the filtering criteria, and it kind of destroys the brand, and it destroys like really like what's the purpose of the restaurant open in the first place? You know what I mean? Like, and
and you're seeing that with, I'm seeing some full service brands do these. I mean, you're seeing a couple of different directions. You're seeing people do these, a lot of new prototype work, a lot of this call it eatertainment is on, which was big before the pandemic, and now it's big again. It's like, how do you get somebody to come out and play golf or pickleball? You know, and we'll see. I mean, it was Punch Bowl Social was entertainment pre-pandemic, so it wasn't like this is brand.
Those guys are going to come on the pub.
Hey, let's go old school. Chuck E. Cheese was entertainment before anything. But and then you're seeing people do the opposite direction. I'm seeing people take a full service concept and do a fast casual option or a takeout only option. I'm seeing that world too. So it's interesting to see what people are doing out there. In those space, because it seems like everybody's trying to, you know, how do you reinvent yourself, especially if you're a brand that's, you know, like us, 90 years old. How do you stay relevant?
Oh geez, man, I've got plenty of people I connect with. I had like a former CEO of Friendly's on this, and he was asking me the same question.
I mean, I remember going to Friendly's as a kid. You know, I can see it. Getting the Reese's peanut butter Sunday. Like I can see the restaurant, see the inside. You know, I know exactly what it is.
Years ago, I worked in consulting, and one of Disney was like a client, and I remember that a bunch of us went down to the Disney World in Orlando and to do like an observation and walk around with the Imagineers. And they were asking me, one of them was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "It's shit, isn't it?" And they were like, "What do you mean?" And I go, "It's all a bit old. Like it's all a bit kind of worn away." And they're like, "Well, does it remind you of when you were a kid?" And it's like, it looks the exact same. And they were like, "Yeah, and your parents and their parents and your grandparents all have the exact same experience of bringing your kid there to the same place to experience the same kind of thing." And it's that like sort of trend line of sort of like memory is what they're really leaning into as an experience. So everybody, it's like a generational kind of thing. And I think about that a lot for like older brands, like what you're saying, like 91 years old, you know, like Friendly's is like, I think 98 or something. It's like, people remember, like it's funny how you mentioned that your nostalgic memory of like going to somewhere like a Friendly's and you remember it. But it's like, how do you take like that concept and take it into say the 21st century?
Right.
And that like leads me to the question I was going to ask you, which is like, you mentioned loyalty already, and you had your loyalty program already stood up before COVID. Like, how much value as an organization do you like put on your loyalty program now, like in terms of importance?
Yeah, I think I've always been a database guy. My job, I was in the restaurant industry, then went and worked in grocery and convenience store for a large brand that owned both. Had probably the number one loyalty program in the country, you know, ranked. And I learned the power of loyalty and what it can do to drive business. So, you know, when I came to Primanti's, it was like, okay, let's deep dive on loyalty. Let's understand this program we have. Let's tweak it. You know, I was just talking with our loyalty provider today. It's 5 years old. It's like, okay, how we reinvent it 5 years later, but it has to work hard, but it should be it should have a high ROI because these are your customers. We call our customers fans. These are our fans. You know, and I use the adage of, if you've never bought a kids meal from us, we probably shouldn't send you kids meal ads, you know, and kids meal promotions. And that's where loyalty can unlock. It can unlock that extra dollar, that extra visit.
And that's so interesting. You use that exact example. The CEO of Big Chicken who I had on said the exact same thing to me. It's like, don't send me a kid's meal like loyalty message. It's like, I bought that for my kid. You know? And
in
like
grocery. So, you know, when I was in grocery, the club space and Walmart were eating our lunch on toilet paper and paper towels, just destroying us, traditional grocer. And so let's use toilet paper. Something like 95% of Americans buy toilet paper. So, I mean, the joke was like, who are the 5 that don't?
It's just I was going to make that joke.
But like 60% of our customers bought toilet paper. So let's get that 35% and understand what they're looking for. They're looking for the club. It was the club pack is what they were looking for. You know, I want to buy paper towels once a quarter.
Yeah.
And get a really good price. Oh, by the way, I can't buy it at your store because my shopping cart's full because I do so I can't fit it in the shopping cart. So it's like, you know, using loyalty to unlock the behavior. And then targeting that. So there's no reason to give a coupon to people that are already buying toilet paper, but let's go get the people that aren't buying toilet paper from us because they're buying it somewhere. Minus the 5%. To this day, no one knows where those are.
Whoever those people are.
It was hilarious when we unlocked that.
Country. Well,
Yeah,
let's
we
say the
unlocked that
honest.
insight. It was like, wow, there's something interesting. But I think that's where loyalty
Well,
makes sense. Looking at cohorts and modeling consumers to understand. Like, I think what we've done a lot of work around, like I call it the gateway drug. Like, what menu item gets people to go from their first visit to their second visit, and from their second
yeah,
visit to their third visit. And without a loyalty program, you can't really get to a lot of that data.
totally. And that's what I was going to ask you is like, how do you even dive into it? Like, as in, because you have so many stores, I mean, so many geographies, there's so many different sort of behaviors
Yeah,
across the
you hire,
board. So,
you hire
yeah.
really
Like,
smart people. That's the first thing. Yeah.
so, yeah. So you have like people on staff that
And
are
people
there.
on staff, and then we have our loyalty provider, and one of our investors provides us with analytics. They have an analytics team that helps out, and and then hey, I will be the first to tell you, you don't need to be smart. You just need to know who to copy and steal from. So I don't want to think
Genius steals. That's what they say.
yeah, I don't think we're not smart, but we do a lot of looking at what other people are doing and understanding their programs, and a lot of reading, and you can find a lot of things out pretty fast. The other thing is you can do something today, and this is what I love about the restaurant business. You can do something today, and by about 5 o'clock, if it's working or not.
Yeah.
Because you can drop an offer to your loyalty members, and it's 2:20 here right now. At 5 o'clock, you'd start seeing people show up and know if it's good or not. So that's the power. You can try things quickly. You're not going to put the company out of business if you do a small subset to understand behaviors.
Yeah, I wish I had the same. I mean, I wish my lead to close happened in 3 hours. Here I am, like, oh, this test is 6 weeks long.
Yeah.
It's like one customer, please. But it's interesting. I think about the loyalty thing because I think that's the immediate future of restaurant groups like yours. I think like at your size, at that many locations, I think a true unlock is understanding your customers in a way that it's your own first party data. I think like one of the things that I've heard and I see in the literature just online, again, our point about reading, it's all out there, is that like basically if your data is in, like Toast or it's in Uber or DoorDash or whatever, like the second you stop using those products, you start losing access to that kind of data.
Yeah.
Whereas
I think it's important.
It's a moat to have your own data,
Yeah. It's important with every partner to understand what they're doing with your data. Because that's the first question. Like, okay, what are you doing with my data? Where's it going? Who owns it? Because I think a lot of people got caught off guard when a point of sale company all of a sudden owns the data.
Well, exactly. And I mean, they're not all necessarily making a lot of money. Nudge to all the ones that are probably listening. You know what I mean? And so the question is then like, what happens to that data and what happens to you as a business? I mean, how insulated? Because I think like it's almost like a reservoir that you need to like keep contained of your own data. I think like if something were to happen, I mean, Jesus, like, I mean, it's so valuable now. It is cool that you're segmenting it. So do you have a very aggressive sort of like marketing program for that as well? Like you're mentioning dropping coupons.
We call them playbooks. So we got lots of playbooks running for different strategies. It could be 50 to 60 playbooks running at any time. So, here's the playbook to drive repeat business. Here's a playbook to drive, menu depth, things like that. Here's a playbook to drive average check. So we got lots of playbooks that are constantly running and tweaking, and there's AI behind the scenes because you can't do it manually unless you throw bodies against it.
Actually, but you brought up AI. I mean, I'm not the trendiest term in hospitality.
No, and there's AI, and then there's but hey, ChatGPT, the stuff that can do is like I'm making this prediction now, and I love all my copywriter and graphic design friends, but I'm saying 6 to 12 months, the copywriting and graphic design jobs are going to be severely impacted once ChatGPT, because like I play around with it and like design this, and it comes back and you're like, okay, well, it misspelled or it missed what I was trying to understand. But 6 to 12 months, they're going to get it.
Totally. I mean, when I use it, I mean, obviously this is a live recording, but like putting captions on videos, for example, like I use an AI tool for that. Like I have to watch everything because sometimes it comes out kind of like the way sometimes the words it spits out are kind of odd, or it doesn't quite hear me in particular. But I mean, it's amazing. I mean, like this video tool here that we're recording this will actually send me a summary of this conversation after the fact.
Right.
And I don't like sending, like for me, I don't like publishing ChatGPT stuff, but I see it as a brilliant first draft tool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
If you want to get your head in the right place of like, what did I just talk about? And then if they were to spit out, like, here's how we would do this in a LinkedIn post, you're like, oh, okay, awesome. Or
Think of all the, I mean, I always think about all the tasks let's start with our managers need to do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like, how far are we away from AI being able to do some of that work for them so they can be out on the floor taking care of their people and taking care of our fans?
Well, that's exactly it. You know, like the role of the GM in any of these restaurants. I mean, like, I'd love your take on that because that's a really good question that segues into that thing I like talking about, which is like how the role of the GM is evolved. Mm-hmm. Because we're talking about the role of AI in unlocking potential more time for GMs to be GMs. So, like, how has the role changed in, say, the last like even 4 years?
I think we've got a lot more tools they have to manage than they used to. So let's just start there, and a lot more channels. And then I think the power of data, I mean, the amount of data that flows at them, I'm always like, you know, one of our operators always like, just give me these 5 things, but we've got 500 things we could pull at any point. And when I started in this business, you waited for the green bar report to be delivered. I think 10 days after, you know, it was like 3 days after the week ended. So it was like 10 days. And there was no instantaneous, I can open my phone now and see what sales are at this moment at a restaurant. So, you know, as a GM, you have that. There's so much data that it's like, how do you manage that? We're still trying to run a restaurant and still trying to deal with all the craziness of running a restaurant, from people to supplies to fans to, you know, things breaking. So I think that's the piece that I look at. Our team has a lot more tools than 5 years ago. So they got to manage each one. Each one has got its own level of importance. And then they also just have so much more data coming at them. And it's like, what's important? You know, and some of them are great. We have GMs that are phenomenal using the data to drive their business, and others, it's like, you know, they're overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like it is the most important role in the restaurant.
It's the most important person in our company. That's what I would say. Exactly. I'm like, I start with, I am the least important person in the company. You know,
you're relatively.
No, I'm the least important because, you know, I don't make any money for the company. It all happens at the restaurant level. But you know, it's the GM. A well-run restaurant is highly correlated to the person running the GM of that
restaurant. I mean, that's fair. I mean, but the GM is like without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I was going to make a Steelers reference, but I forgot his name. Is it Kenny Pickett? Is that his name? Is he
he's the quarterback. We're hoping that we're hoping the new offensive coordinator can get him in his right direction.
Yeah.
No.
Especially after getting annihilated by the 49ers.
Yeah. No, when I was in grad school, I had an opportunity to spend time with Norman Brinker, you know, restaurant legend, founded Chili's, which is mistaken. Yeah, legend. Probably one of 5 chain restaurant legends. And I remember somebody in our grad school class, because he spent a whole day with us, asked him, like, okay, what's the number one thing you can do to drive your business? And everyone's waiting for like the marketing program, or you can remodel, or you can build a new site. And he's like, get the right general manager in the restaurant. He's like, that's the number one most important thing you can do. If you have the right GM, everything else will fall into place. And, you know,
but then I guess the question is, how do you equip them
to
take on like all of these new things? Like you mentioned, like there's so much more data, there's so many more tools, you know, they're dealing with suppliers, they're dealing with menus, they're dealing with people, like staff, they're dealing with like
they're dealing with the speed of the business.
No,
I think part of it's training. You know, you invest in the training, invest in systems and tools that make their lives easier. So we constantly are looking for like, okay, what's the pain point, and then how do we make it better? And how do we use technology to make their pain points go away? So, you know, and I think you can't neglect, you know, training and coaching and developing.
That's what I was going to ask you. Exactly.
Yeah. Heavy
on your size, you'd want to be like very heavy at that. Yeah.
Yeah. Full training team, LMS. You know, how do you get somebody from an assistant manager to be the GM? How do you get someone from GM to be a great GM? And it's, you know, kind of ongoing training. There's the functional training, and then there's the soft skill training. And the closer you get to the top, it's a lot less about function and more about soft skills.
Interesting you say that. I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I think about a lot is that, like, you know, service can be taught. Like, you can teach somebody POS, you can teach somebody how to like analyze a BI dashboard, but how do you teach these sort of like qualitative,
Yeah.
intangible sort of skills that separate good from great.
Yeah, I think it's one, identifying what are the skills. Sometimes it's pairing them up. Our operations directors, which are multi-unit managers, they were great GMs. So it's like pairing, okay, so your operations director should be great at teaching you XYZ because they were great. That's how they became an operations director.
Yeah.
But it's also identifying, things like conflict resolution, having a difficult conversation. Like that's I think one of the things we learned recently is like how to interview. I mean, I take it for granted that I've been interviewing people for 24, 25 years. You know how to interview after 25 years, and you know pretty quick when you do an interview, this person's good or not. But like,
yeah,
I think we realize our GMs need training on how to interview. So we take our head of recruiting and have her teach the class. No one's better than the person that leads recruiting on interviewing, which does that for a living. So I think that's the piece. It's like understanding what skills make a GM great, and then taking your best GMs and having them. I spend a lot of time when I talk to our new GMs and ask them like, okay, who do you call when you don't want to call your operations director? Who you call it? Because you're going to have that time. You don't want to call your operations director to say, hey, this is going wrong, or how do I do this? So like, who do you call? And if they don't have an answer, it's like, okay, let me find for somebody for you to call.
Yeah.
Let's take our top 25% of general managers and get them to be mentors and develop others, because there's the closer you get to the top, once again, less positions. So how do you enrich a GM's life? If some of them don't want to be operations directors, some of them do, but there's only one or two added a year. So it's like, how do you do that?
It's interesting because like I think a lot about that is like one of the things I definitely feel like I've heard doing millions of these podcasts is that like in this post-COVID era, there's like a more deliberate effect or deliberate initiative from like large restaurant groups like yours to like design a clearer pathway for progression within the company for people who want it. And so when you're identifying people as GMs, presumably you got like this mentorship program that they can go to like more senior GMs that can sort of like guide them towards potential opportunities, and also send you the feedback you need to understand like what's our bench, what's our pipeline like for. Is that like, am I accurate here?
No, totally.
Am I doing a decent job understanding the pipeline?
We hire a mix of outside and internal people into our management training program, and it's people need different skills. An internal person needs maybe sometimes different skills than the external person. The external person doesn't know how to run the kitchen like if you're coming out as a cook and you want to be an assistant manager, it's like, okay, well, those people, they can crush it in the kitchen, but they don't always know front of the house skills or how to coach people. So it's like, how do you teach them that? And then how do you give them training ongoing beyond the functional part of the job, the non-functional? I'm seeing more and more chains, and I'm interested to see at what size it makes sense, but more and more chains partnering with universities.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you see Denny's do it. Denny's can do it because they have thousands of locations, but like, at what level does the university, because you're starting to see credits you can get for taking some of these classes. I mean, that's an interesting thing. The restaurant industry is one of the few industries in America where you can progress through without a college degree. You don't even need we don't even check if they have a high school diploma. I mean, that's what's great about this industry. You can really progress through it, based on your personal commitment and work and your effort. It's not always about, a degree. We do hire lots of people that have degrees, and they bring other skills to the party.
And having it as a prerequisite, actually, I was speaking to a woman. She was the head of leadership training and development at Chick-fil-A in their corporate office in Georgia. And she was saying to me that like one of the key things they did was remove the degree requirement for people that could potentially own a Chick-fil-A, because it had basically placed like an artificial ceiling for like just the most quality candidates that they had in their pipeline that obviously just didn't go, but that worked their socks off to get to a position where they could get to the opportunity to have it, and they weren't able to have that opportunity because of a kind of quasi glass ceiling, so to speak. But it's interesting.
I'd love to know how they trained my pleasure, man. If I could figure out how I heard it took like 7 or 8 years before that happened. But yeah.
When you say trained my pleasure, what do you mean?
At Chick-fil-A, when you say something like, could I have the chicken nugget meal? They always respond with my pleasure.
I love that.
I mean, they're brilliant.
Well, I can make the intro.
Yeah, no, I mean, they are one of the most brilliant operators out there. I know a couple people that have that went to undergrad and grad school that are Chick-fil-A franchisees.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an unbelievable operation. The volumes they do are just insane.
Especially because they only work 6 days a week.
Yeah, and I forget about that. And they're
Yeah.
6 days a week. Like,
but you know what? Like, I mean, they're a good bar to have for the whole industry.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I think every brand wants to have their own flavor, but like aspiring to be a place where somebody feels excited to go. Like, you can have 5 locations, you can have 50, you can have 500, but it's like if somebody's excited to go to your restaurant because they know they'll have a great time, they'll have a great experience. I mean, there's a lot to be admired, but there's a lot to be inspired by as well for everyone's own operation as well. And I think like, as it's 20, we're in March now, which is just funny to me because I would say, oh, it's the New Year's upon us, but we're in March now.
Yeah, you can't say Happy New Year's anymore.
Yeah, we're at the end of Q1 now. But like one of the things last year is like, the economy is just like bizarre. You know what I mean? Like last year was like inflation, the year before was hiring, and it's like I'm not really sure what the new one is this year. Could be like government regulations, like in California, where they have minimum wage.
I think
that won't happen in your area, but
but I think the election is not helping the cause.
Do you think? Oh, do you think that?
I think it's causing enough. There's something going on with the consumer nationally. I don't think anyone's figured out what it is yet. Is it interest rates? Is it is it some of the things the Fed's doing? Is it lack of ability to borrow certain areas? Is it the election? I don't know. Is it what? I mean, weather is definitely an impact in Q1, and you're seeing people nationally talk about it. Didn't snow last year in our market in Q1, and it snowed this year. So that has an impact.
Which is amazing. Where the predominant amount of stores you have are in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania is
you said 4 states.
Yeah, so we have 2 in Ohio. We have 1 in Maryland. A second one we are going into Baltimore. This summer. So that'll be our second location in Maryland. And then I think we have 4 locations in West Virginia. Don't hold me to that. It might be 5. No, 4 locations in West Virginia. We're opening our 5th in West Virginia this summer too. So we'll have 5 in the state of West Virginia. It's been a good state for us. And then the rest are in Pennsylvania. Yeah, heavy concentration in Pittsburgh and then into central Pennsylvania. It's we go east to like Hershey area, not into the Philly market.
And so I mean, I guess, on that, it's like, what are the biggest challenges facing you now? As we come to the end of the podcast, let me ask the opening question. But I mean, like, what do you think are like just like big challenges that you guys face?
Yeah, I mean, I think, traffic and sales are probably the biggest industry challenges right now. I think the supply chain has definitely calmed down.
Yeah.
I think identifying ways to mitigate cost increases in other areas, because there's other areas that are going up. So looking for ways, people talk about the hiring crisis. I've been through like 5 or 6 of these in my life. It's no different than 1999 or 2008 or 2001. There are people out there. I heard a great quote the other day. If you're fishing in the same pond with the same bait, how do you expect to beat your competition?
That's fair.
So it's like, if you're going to fish in that pond, what are you going to do different? What's different bait are you going to put out there to attract people?
Yeah.
Retention is a big focus for us because like, I don't believe we have a recruiting issue because we can hire people with no problem. It's how do you retain them and understand why people leave and teach people how do you hire correctly and how do you do all those things correctly. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is like just making sure that you train and recruit and onboard and treat people great. And but it's no different than 1999 and 2001 and 2008 and it's not a different hiring crisis.
It's interesting. I guess it kind of it's nice for you that you're able to say that's not a crisis. I think crisis is definitely a very exaggerated way of phrasing it as well. I think there's just like a permanent difficulty in the space now. I think it's probably, I don't know if that's a better way of phrasing it, but like you mentioned retention, which is interesting, and you also used the fishing and the bait, that kind of metaphor. And like when you think about retention, what's the bait then?
Right. Yeah, I think we're looking at benefits. We're looking at work-life balance. It's like, what can we do different than Chick-fil-A? What can I do different than Texas Roadhouse? So, those are the things we're constantly looking at. And we've made adjustments on managers. We've made adjustments to our hourly package because it's like you have to be better than what's out there.
Yeah.
Or different. You got to do something different if not, you're going to see a same. So it's like, how do you get better or different or unique? So
I mean, it's great that you think of it that way. I mean, like, I feel like what separates a lot of the brands that I've spoken with what I feel is just the kind of narrative outside is that, like, you can compete on dollar, but a lot of people aren't really competing. Like the consumer, like the person isn't really competing on dollar for like $16 an hour, 17. Are they likely to change? Not really, but are they likely to stay if there's like an ancillary benefit for them being there, which like obviously the employee experience has to be great. But what makes up career path, exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I always, I mean, I'm fortunate to go back to my grad school at Penn State and talk to the hospitality college. And I always say, if somebody's offering dramatically more money than everyone else, you got to question why they are. Because sometimes they have to pay people to work there because it's a really bad place to work. So, so part of that is like, we're competitive. We are not the highest payer and we're not the lowest payer. We're competitive.
Yeah.
Do
you have any unusual ones?
What was it?
Do you have any unusual or unique benefits or?
For our, I mean, this is probably interesting for our general managers. They don't pay for healthcare.
Okay, that's unique.
Yeah, I mean, it's and then for I think for our hourly people, everyone gets to eat a free meal.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, and I think you forget that, like, for some people, that's like the biggest meal of their day.
Yeah, it's like, I mean,
provide them. But we're more flexible than we ever were. I mean, we talk about if you find someone great and they only want to work 2 days a week, hire them. Back in the day, it was like, if you're not working full time, I'm not interested in you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the world of Uber and Amazon and Lyft and gig jobs has created this environment where people don't want to work 5 days a week, or they don't want to work at one job 5 days a week.
Yeah.
One of our best bartenders bartends 4 nights a week for us and 1 night for somebody else. I'm like, well, why do you do that? She's like, why? I like a change of pace. So,
I mean, that's unique, but I mean, I guess everyone's kind of happy.
Yeah.
So it is it's unusual. But yeah, no, the reason why I asked is something unique because I'm like, I feel like I'm hearing lots more about benefits in a way that didn't exist like 4 years ago. I mean, benefits existed 4 years ago, but I think the emphasis on the types of benefits besides simply just like the hourly salary that people get, that conversation's changed. I had one guy on, he's one of the founders of Tupelo Honey in North Carolina. And he was saying to me, he was like, man, you know what? Like pet insurance, like the entire staff are gone mad for it.
Yeah, no, they do that cafeteria plan. And we've talked about that. Like, okay, here's a bucket of points. Because for some people, I like that. Because for some people, pet insurance is really compelling. And for other people, it's not.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't need dental, so I'm going to take the company credit and go do it for something else.
Totally, exactly. And that's part of the flexibility they're looking for in the first place. So,
but it creates a stickiness because you're like, I'm not going to leave because I have pet insurance.
Exactly. Well, it's amazing. I mean, you're in a battle to retain staff. Mm-hmm. I mean,
and you're competing against Uber and Lyft, Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot. Just keep going down the list of people that weren't competitors, 5 years ago.
Yeah, but then the inverse of that is, do you want people who want to work at Home Depot working in your restaurant?
I think, but I'll flip it on the head. I think people are saying, I'm going to stand in a kitchen and cook, or I can go stand at an Amazon fulfillment center and pack boxes.
And have a podcast and
chefs
screaming at me.
It's hot and it's physical, but it's hot and physical. And by the way, they're paying $25 an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the piece. That's where you got to flip it on its head.
Yeah. I mean, it's a unique challenge to have, but I think, like we were saying earlier with like AI, you're like, how much of the GM job can I automate out of it so that he can can focus on being the best at hospitality they can be. I think the same will go for frontline. I mean, you hear it already. Like, I mean, that like I had like CTO CKE on, and they're like Hardee's Cars Jr. and he's talking about, AI generated drive-throughs.
Yeah,
like 99% success rate. That person that they would employ, where will they move that person in the restaurant if they don't need to be sitting with a microphone, and like they can be redeployed elsewhere and that talent can be used elsewhere, or they can just not have that person and save that cash. Do you know what I mean? So like 100%. I think the role of front of house is absolutely in for like a fun, like interesting time over the next like 3 to 5 years as like these tools and the automations that are kind of happening in software now really start having like real world implications. And I think front of house in the restaurant, I think we'll see a lot of that. We'll see a lot of that.
Yep, definitely. I think it's things are moving fast, so it's like, how do you continue to stay up to touch, figure out what drives the business, because it's the speed of the business is unbelievable compared to waiting 10 days, 3 days weekend to get the green bar report.
You're like, it's done. But here, tell me, we're up at time, Adam. So like the one thing I always ask everybody at the end of the podcast is a very vague question to really put you on the spot, which is, what advice would you give somebody listening to this podcast?
I'm a big believer. I'd say a couple things. Do it wrong quickly. Try things, get it done, learn very fast if it works or not. And then, I'm a huge consumer of content. There's so much out there that that whole idea, you don't need to be smart, you just need to copy and steal. But there's so much out there that if you consume industry trade journals and, the email newsletters and go to trade shows, you can find some really great ideas, not only from other brands, but from suppliers. I have so many suppliers that brought great ideas, but even other brands. I found this. It's the largest industry after the government, but it feels like the smallest industry. Because I think in two degrees of separation between Alex and I, we'd probably be like, okay, well, here's an example. Can I talk to the person at Chick-fil-A? Boom, there I am. And people are very sharing in this industry, which I found in very I've sat down and talked not knowing that they're the CEO of Chili's. I sat at a conference and sat at a breakfast table and we talked for a half hour, and then I find out he gives me his card and he's CEO, but it was like totally approachable.
Yeah.
And we talked the business. I think that's, people in this industry are willing to talk to the business. You don't have to go into the details, but you'd be shocked how willing people are to talk about things. I've
noticed that. That's this podcast just worked for me. Well, Adam, you're an absolute jet, man. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.